It was suggested to me that I should read some of my work on this website, and it is precisely that which I shall shortly be doing. I'll be changing the readings every 3 weeks or so. I really don't think you need to know Khalil Gibran's The Prophet in order to get something out of my book, The Prophet of the New Millennium. I describe it as both a compliment and a complement, i.e. with an E, to the original. Both books take place in the town of Orphalese. In both books, the central character is asked questions by those gathered around him, and he responds. And yes, it is a photograph of me on the cover, and no, I am not the prophet of the book. I do not consider myself any kind of a prophet, in fact. The story of how it came to be my picture which graced the cover of the book is a long one, but it boils down to my publisher, John Hunt. John Hunt, coincidentally, was also Byron's publisher, down to John Hunt convincing me that no one knew what I looked like, so what the hell, why shouldn't we use a photograph of me? John had clearly forgotten about websites, mostly, I suspect, because it wouldn't be he who would suffer the consequences. To me, the consequences are that I cringe with embarrassment each time I see the cover, so please buy the book. Please spare my blushes and buy the book. Let us please see this edition sold out, and let me replace the picture on future editions with something else. A lunar module, if needs be, landing in the middle of the Hollywood Bowl, King Kong gazing adoringly at a cloud of golden daffodils, Boris Yeltsin in a bikini, anything. I've initially selected 3 short sections from The Prophet of the New Millennium. The first comes pretty close to the start of the book. Here it is. When my critics seek to misinform you, people of Orphalese, hear again what it was I did say. Go again into the noiseless quiet and have the courage to listen to what that quiet tells you, and have the courage to hear that quiet, and to heed it. Let your own questions form themselves. In the quiet you will find love, also for those deriders. They will have widened your truth, or underscored your truth, or brought you to another truth, or cleared your ears to have allowed you to hear the truth indeed. Those who maintain they hear me and that they take umbrage at my words have not heard me. I preach nothing other than that you allow your own quiet to be your own preacher. I advocate nothing other than that your own quiet be your own judge. I urge only that you have a happier life. If I do offend, it is because you were disturbed not by me, not even by yourself, but by your perception of yourself distorted by the noise, and by a perception likewise distorted of your own best interests and your own happiness. The prophet started to walk a little way amongst them. People of Orphalese, he said, yours is an awesome destiny. We live in terrible and dangerous times. You who are listeners, you must teach the world to listen as you listen, with wisdom, with its heart and with its soul. For it not to listen will be for the world to die. And it must listen not to the talkers, but to the streams crying acid tears, and to the forest dying by 1,000 cuts, to the shrieks of orphans buckling at hollow breasts, and to the thunder of hollow bellies, to the screams of those hit by bullies and by bullets. Speakers, so many speakers, speak only that we will not hear those sounds, the sounds of truth. They fear for the consequences to themselves. They think true happiness reeks of unhappiness, and that surrogate happiness is better than none, which is sad for them, but toxic when that fear is moulded into creed. Real listeners revel in the noiseless quiet. It is so often in such quiet, and only in such quiet, that we truly hear, and that we hear truly. And here's the second. A young woman let go of her lover's hand. Jet hair sheened down her olive back. She wore a sarong of lime and an armful of delicate bangles which tinkled each frequent time her hand veiled her tinkling grin. Sex? She asked and blushed. What of sex? What a disservice those who should know better have done to sex, said the prophet. Sex is not humankind's debasement, but its triumph. It is not the nada of God's creativity, but its zenith. God's greatest miracles are not manifested in the phenomenal, but in the mundane. To walk on water is a conjuring trick. To turn water into wine is less of a miracle than turning water into sweat. We wonder at the extraordinary and will not see see the wonder in the ordinary. To create life, to create a life, that is a miracle indeed. We are so misguided in our reverence and our revelry. We want our messiahs to be circus performers. We seek spectacle, not sight. Messiahs arrive not to awe you with miracles around you, but to awaken you to the miracle which is you, and to the miracle which is within you, and to that Messiah too within you. The noise deafens us to the miracles which bombard us. We are like jackdaws, attracted by tinsel and not by substance. The miracle is not the car, but the oil. Not the radio, but the radio wave. Not the jet, but the fly. Sex is another miracle. The very clumsiness of sex is seized with the most perfect grace. Into its very carnality is engraved its most sublime spirituality. Those are already two of its miracles. When we give ourselves sexually, it is in all senses that we expose ourselves. And such is not only life-giving, but a metaphor for it. Self-exposure is a requirement of creation. In all humankind aspiration to know God, or to emulate God, or to be God, at no time is it closer than when involved in sex. It is the ultimate act of giving and receipt, and where both not only feed off of each other, but are also one and the same. This too is a miracle. In this too, it brings humankind closer to God. Sex is an act of consummate trust. We are never more easily wounded than when we are unarmored. We are never more unarmored than when involved with sex. If we abuse that trust, we abuse not only our lover, but also creation and creativity and the spirit of both. Even if we are having sex only with our bodies, even if the union is merely physical. I have heard priests claim that venereal disease is God's punishment for an overindulgence in immoral sex. Does not that claim have about it the same spiritual profundity as that flu is God's punishment for an overindulgence in immoral breathing? If it is an act of tenderness and of mutual giving, there is nothing immoral about sex that is only physical. It lacks an important dimension and may therefore be less satisfying, but it is not immoral. To say of sex that it should be exclusive to married couples is to say that eating should be restricted to the well-fed. To claim that one act of sex is acceptable and another perverse or abhorrent is to seek to constrain a miracle. Monogamy is no more a requirement of a healthy sexual life than monotheism is a requirement of a healthy spiritual life. For many it is. Democracy, if it means anything, however, means the defense of the few. Provided they are consensual and between adults, provided that they are undertaken in the interests of giving and receiving pleasure, there are no abhorrent sexual practices, only practices which an individual may find abhorrent. No one has the right or the ability on behalf of other people to define either. To be an arbiter of the propriety of sexual practices is to choose the world's menu. Clearly, though, and equally, it is not just the act of sex which has to be consensual, but the acts. The exchange of a gift of kindness can never be immoral. Consensual sex between adults is never immoral. It is always a miracle. One joy which contains a fistful of miracles. This is no gewgaw of an orb or scepter. This is a treasure indeed. The miracle of sex is that it is not just the miracle of life. Sex is the bliss of heaven adapted for human consumption. It is God's thank you for putting up with life. Thank you for having given me your time. I do appreciate how precious a commodity in today's world that is. In the world I'd like to build with you, we'd have more of it, time, a lot more of it, more time for the important things in life. If these readings have whetted your appetite, well, obviously I'd be extremely pleased. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Anne to explain how you can buy the books. Thank you again for listening. As Dave Allen, the late and much lamented Irish comedian, would say, goodbye, and may your God go with you.
Please visit the purchase section on the website. This will give you direct links to Gregory's pages on online bookstores.